Hi, everyone, and welcome to Presently Aqui with Claudia. I am Claudia, your host. And Presently Aqui is a community of healers that come together from around the world to share their deep transformational stories about their self-discovery and self-healing. And as you know, how excited I get to have a guest always. And today they're all special. I'm not gonna pick one over the other because they're all just phenomenal. And I'm excited to introduce you all to Kelly. And Kelly Keefe is a transformation guide, empowerment and abundance coach, Reiki master teacher, and vibrational artist passionate about helping people live from their heart space. She's an international best-selling author and speaker. Serving globally, Kelly provides transformational coaching, group programs, and retreats supporting to radically transform your life for the better. In her book, Rise Above Fear, Kelly supports you in understanding how fear works and how we can befriend it to transcend the barriers we place upon ourselves. She lives fully and loves to see others do the same. Welcome, Goddess.
Thank you so much. Your voice is just a soothing balm for the soul. It's so good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It must be my 20 years of singing.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I also was in another life reservations agent for a lot of hotels, so I can make it really. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Presently Aqui. So I know, I know the inflections of the voice really well. So thank you. And today we have a special surprise. Kelly's gonna go and take us into his beautiful meditation before we start our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. Cool. So wherever you are, if you're seated, go ahead and just allow yourself to really set into your seat bones here. Feeling your hips growing heavier with each breath. Maybe placing your feet on the floor, wiggling the toes a bit, and then allowing them to land. Just beginning to bring an awareness to the spine stacked above the hips, feeling this support, this alignment going up the spine. Bringing an awareness to the neck and the head. Allowing yourself to feel the body naturally adjust any slight shifts that are needed to bring in the perfect alignment for you in this moment. And just beginning to observe the breath, moving in and out the nose. We're not changing it, not judging it, just observing. Observing the sensation of the breath as it moves through the nose, the throat, the chest, the belly, and the sensation as it goes up and out the nose. And in a couple of breaths, which I'll lead in a couple of breaths, we'll deepen our inhales to an inhale of 4 in a couple of breaths. So with our next inhale, breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. Open the mouth, let it go with a sigh. Again, breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. Taking in another sip, and another sip, hold, and let it go with a sigh. And again, breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. Breathing in another sip, and another sip. Even if you think you can't, one more sip, hold, and let it go with a sigh. Allowing yourself to feel the space created within and around you. And beginning to imagine a ball of white light rotating just above the head. Seeing this bubble, this ball of white light spinning around the head. And as you're ready, welcoming in this ball of warm white light. Seeing it moving down the head. Seeing this bubble pop over the head. And this warm white light begins to melt over the forehead, the temples, the eyes. Seeing it moving down through the cheeks, the back of the head, the back of the neck. Feeling the throat, the collarbones, the shoulder blades. Feeling the shoulders, the arms, the elbows. Feeling the forearms, the wrists, the hands. The warm white light flows down through the head, down the back, moving down, down, down the spine. Feeling the chest flowing down the torso. Feeling the pelvic floor, the hips. Flowing down through the glutes, the quads, the knees. Down through the shins, the calves. Feeling the ankles, the feet. Flowing out the toes. And allowing this light to burst out the soles of the feet, feeling it beginning to penetrate and go deep into Earth Mother. Allowing this warm white light to flow down through the head, all the way through and deep into the earth. And allowing this to continue to run as it needs to. And with keeping this connection, taking a deep breath into the belly and let it go. Beginning to wiggle the fingers, the toes, maybe moving the head side to side, rolling the shoulders, taking your time, finding yourself arriving into the space.
Beautiful. That was a spiritual shower.
Yes. That's a great term for that cleanse, yes.
That was marvelous. And your voice was so light and airy. I loved it. Thank you.
Con gusto, amor.
Oh my gosh, this is a great way to start a conversation. All right, listeners, so thank you for joining us in that meditation. Hopefully, if you're driving, you're able to play that back later when you're home and enjoy it. So with that said, beautiful Goddess Kelly, if you can please share with us, what are some of the challenges that you face in your path to self-discovery?
Yeah, so many.
So many, I know. It's like, which one do I pick?
Yeah. You know, I feel for me and I appreciate the journey of being able to go back into the period of remembering and looking at those spaces. And I am a recovering lone wolf. And when I went through the process of being led to my hermit cave, you know, going through a lot of adversity and what I perceived at the time, betrayals and hurts and all the things, I found myself spending a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
To the space where the people who were my friend, who, you know, I thought were my friends, who, you know, filters, how do we describe it? Those who I resonated with at one time, who no longer felt in resonance. All my interests were changing. I had no interest in partying and drinking and smoking. I didn't really understand why. And all I wanted to do was meditate and be alone, and I was sensitive, and you know, then books are falling off of shelves. I manifest my first Reiki teacher, you know, and this path started to present itself. And I didn't know anyone around me who got it and who
Right.
was on the same wavelength. And that was really challenging,
Yes.
going through that, let alone the comprehending who I was and
Yeah.
accepting of the truth of it and learning to listen to that space. That was
Yeah.
definitely, I think, one of the hardest ones.
I can definitely relate. I think for most of us, we can all relate, right? I love how you said you're recovering lone wolf. That is amazing. I've never heard it put that way, and that is all of us. Like we, right? Because the world has kind of put us in a place where we weren't accepted. Our parents, friends, and a lot of our abilities were not known or welcomed, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's, I started at a young age, I was having a lot of mystical experiences.
Yeah.
And my parents shut it down. Rightfully, they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
Um, and I also was bullied as a kid. So there's a lot of beliefs I had that being close to people or having friends equaled being hurt. So there was a lot of subconscious junk that I had to get rid of. And if we look at a macro, we're living in a time where we went from tribal living to now a lot of individualization, where it's everyone for themselves and fiercely independent,
Right.
et cetera, where we've kind of forgotten that interdependence is the way. We've gone like, Mr. Independent, where there's a balance, such as anything in life, there's a balance to us being independent, where the real sweet spot is interdependence.
Yeah.
And that's where we allow ourselves to be in community, where we allow ourselves
Yeah.
to receive support and
Yeah.
to be together and also to be able to give.
Right. Yeah, definitely. How did you feel, growing up and going through these aspects? Where in that did you start creating that internal cave for yourself, your lone wolf, right? Because it was a survivor mechanism, as most of us go through. What was it that you started to really? I guess you made a safe space for yourself, right? Because you didn't feel safe. And how did you handle that and the scrutiny that came with it?
Yeah. Well, when, again, hindsight, I think it was Steve Jobs who said that, like, you can only connect the dots when you look back. And that space where we can see that everything's so divinely orchestrated.
Yeah.
And if something happened a certain way, it's how it had to happen. If it was supposed to happen any other way, then it would have happened that way. But as a child and through my adolescence, my way to create a safe space then was to pretend to sleep, which then brought me into these deep meditations. So I had hundreds of hours of meditation under my belt through childhood and adolescence, where I was going to these alternative places and not understanding why I'd see these colors or why I was having these experiences, which made me feel very unbalanced here, and further created that feeling of separation.
Right.
But if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be who I am today because, again, I had hundreds of hours of meditation under my belt, accessing these higher planes, preparing me for who I am and what I do today. And then creating that space for me in that apartment to go into my nook, I'm a great hermit. My human design, I'm a projector. My ideal environment's the cave. Like that's really comfortable for me. And knowing that I can create something that feels good and I have a bit more control of who comes in and out of my space feels really great for me. Because again, we're all on this journey of that self-discovery, self-mastery, and knowing thyself, and finding that balance. For me, a space with that is, and still to this day, I have to balance, okay, solitude is great. And then there can be a fine line of when solitude becomes isolation, and that's not healthy for anybody.
Right.
And so it was the moving to New York where I started to find my community and started to dip into these different waters and find that, like, oh, doing this journey with people and having community who gets it and finding soul family, that's such an immediate accelerator and a fresh
Yeah.
spring of water for the soul.
Wow. How did you learn to meditate as a child? Like, where did you get that from?
I guess past lives. I really don't have,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
like there's nothing of, I remember laying in my tiny bedroom that I convinced my parents to let me convert the like home office into my bedroom because I had to have my own room. So it was like
Yeah.
literally you could put like a bed and like my old school stereo and like that was my room.
Okay.
Um, and I remember at night I would be wired. I couldn't sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow I just trained myself to be able to slow my heart rate down
Mm-hmm.
and like bring myself into sleep and go hit these different colors in these different spaces. Like that's some like advanced yogi stuff.
Yeah.
I was just doing it. I don't,
Wow.
yeah.
That is remarkable
Yeah.
because, it's for the child brain to go from hyperactive, right? Like so much energy and you don't know, right? You also don't know what all of this means, the emotions, the thoughts, and then for you to just figure out that sweet spot, that is truly amazing. And then to have it done, as a child and then continue on your teenage years and like you said, like by in your 20s you have hundreds of hours
Yeah.
of meditation under your belt. And I too am a projector in the human design. Mine is the shores though, which makes sense. I'm over here in Los Angeles, but that is truly amazing. What type of projector it did you
Yeah.
find out what it was?
Yeah. I'm a projector 2-5, so I'm a hermit heretic.
Wow. Okay, I'm a 3-5.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's
So
the martyr.
you get the 5. That makes
I
so much
have a
sense
5.
into podcasting.
Yes, right. Getting the message out and then not caring what people say because it needs to be said. So you understand. But remarkable because I don't want to come across many projectors. As you know, it's only 10%, but you're the second one. And so there's something to be said there that perhaps we're emanating some frequency and like you're saying, right, coming back to that tribe, and because we're here to kind of direct the show, right, and say, hey, we could see outside. For I'm just describing it to the listeners for those that are not aware of human design. And as a projector, there's 4 types, right? Four types. So yeah, the projector, we are kind of the director of the movie, right? We see the bigger vision, and then everyone else has their parts. So maybe that's something that I don't know. That just came through. I'm like, maybe that's why we're finding each other, to kind of unite that bigger picture in the tribal space. So you mentioned that you moved to New York and you found your tribe. Tell me a little bit more about that because I didn't. I'm from New York City. I know we had this conversation, but I was unable to, and until I moved out here. So I would love to hear how that worked out for you.
Yeah. So when I moved to New York, I was already identifying as a yogi.
Mm.
So I was finding different yoga studios and I continued to have some serendipitous ways. Mind you, I was attuned to level 1 at that time. So I also was, practicing every
Okay.
day. I was deep in, um, you know, in the scriptures and being with the Bible, and I was doing my work to be in alignment. And I was sent to New York. I was like, I'm moving to New York, and everyone was like, "Where are you gonna live? What are you gonna do for work?" And I said, "I don't know any of that.
Right.
But all I know is that by the time I get there, I'll have somewhere to live and I'll have work." And both manifested. So it was a very divinely guided experience, and it's still my experience here. Like, my whole journey of New York is very interesting. But I was moving through different yoga studios, and after a breakup with someone that I met on a Tuesday, 11 a.m., I found myself at a venue. It was still closed to the public. I don't know how I got there. Like, I know there was something like earthly that I got invited to something or it popped up on a Facebook. I don't recall, but it was a very random.
Right.
And I found myself at a cacao ceremony.
Oh.
with these people. I didn't know anyone, but we sat, and Florencia, who's now a dear sister, she's the founder of Cacao Lab, and she had just gotten back from Guatemala, and she was clear that her mission was to bring the medicine of cacao to the world.
Yeah.
And there I was sitting in this cacao ceremony, and it opened my heart, and I had these deep conversations with new sisters and friends.
Yeah.
And then I started going there like twice a week, and then I became part of like creating the events, and now that's like main like soul family still. So it was just kind of a boop. I was brought to them.
That's amazing. What year was that?
2016, 2017.
Okay. Yeah, I was in the corporate world and not anywhere near that type of flow of love and wellness, right? That's why I was curious. I'm like, ooh, that's beautiful cacao ceremonies. I have yet to participate in one. I've heard remarkable things, as you just shared a little bit.
Yes, the medicina of cacao. I'm so grateful for. I actually have cacao right here. I do my best to have cacao before a podcast because it supports and being so grounded and present and being from the heart space, and to allow things to flow through. Oh, girl, we're gonna have to set up something to come out there and do some ceremonies, or definitely come to Costa Rica. We'll be, cacao on the daily.
On the daily, and I have bought 100%. Cacao, so I wanted to like be inspired, and I've not. I'm like, I still in my fridge. So I definitely be open to that, and even when I go back home, because I have family there, I would love to get in touch and see what you got going on that side of town. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Beautiful. So at what point and during your journey were you able to pivot and become the healer, right? As you kind of, it seems like organically were you already moving into this space?
Yeah, it was, I'm in awe sometimes of myself this incarnation in a way of like my soul's so old, and I know I've done this so many times that there's a level of just like, okay, this is what I'm here to do, and just like taking radical action that's been at play through the whole thing. Something that I don't share too often on podcasts, this and that, but it feels right to do in this moment, bringing us back to childhood in those spaces. I was receiving visitations from Jesus at 5 years old.
Wow.
And I was conversing with him, and my dad asked me a couple months ago, we were having dinner, he's like, you remember that, right? And I was like, of course I remember. I was like, you remember that? And he's like, yes, I remember. Like, I used to come into your room and hear you talking in the middle of the night and be like, Kelly, honey, what's going on? And he'd be like, oh, nothing, Daddy, I'm just talking to Jesus. Like, crazy. But not crazy. It's just
right.
So there's this, at a soul level, I feel there's been this deep preparation for who I am and who I'm becoming, which we're all on an endless journey of becoming. I don't think it's ever going to end in our lifetime of this endless evolution of who we're becoming. But there's been this deep understanding within myself. And again, everything, I planted myself in the family that I did so that I would have these, my defense mechanism to go into meditation and prepare myself and look at it in these ways. So when I got the clairaudient message to look up healing modalities, I listened. And a couple of weeks later, I received another message that said the heart space. And there was this clear cognizance, this understanding, oh, this is what I'm supposed to create in the world. And I already had the entrepreneur bug because I had a wholesale and retail company right out of school. So I already had this entrepreneurial, space where I was like, I'm going to work for myself. I was like, oh, I got a taste of creating my own world and building a business where I was like, that's for me. Like, I don't think corporate world's for me. Right. So I was like, okay, cool. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So it's just been this natural, like, this is who I'm going to be. There's a lot of, inner turmoils and getting to do the work and things coming up. So I'm not just saying like, oh, it's just been rainbows and sunshine. I just got to it. but there was this innate stamina that just kind of came online with it.
Right, right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, that's amazing. You're like, Daddy, I'm talking to Jesus. I love that. And as a little kid, it's just so innocent and pure. You're
Yeah,
like,
it
yeah.
was. Yeah, I wish there was like recordings of it, but I just remember waking up and when it started, it was, I was scared. Where,
Yeah,
because I remember waking up and just seeing that bright light,
yeah.
and it you know, scared the bejesus out of me, unintended. And I ran into my parents' room and I was like, Mom, Dad, Jesus is in my closet and he won't let me sleep. And, I was the kid. It wasn't monsters under the bed, it was Jesus
Right.
in the closet. Set the tone
That's
for
funny.
my life.
I love that. It's not monsters, it's Jesus, okay?
He won't let me sleep.
Oh my gosh, so beautiful. I only started seeing the white light on when I started working with Archangel Michael. And then when you see it and you feel it, you're like, oh my goodness. So as a child, it must be overwhelming, right? To just be in that vibrational space and just freak out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious where, because children are so plugged in by nature.
Yeah,
And so I'm curious, especially these, like the generation that's coming out right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
they're so tuned in,
So
and
turned
so
on.
many other parents have been on this path. So the consciousness in which they were conceived at is very advanced. So
Yes.
I'm very curious to see how this generation unfolds. I know my nephew, he's 2. He has a stick collection. He has a rock collection. Every time he goes outside, he runs out and gives the tree a hug. And my family's like, I wonder who he gets this from.
I love it. You're like, it's in the family DNA. What do you mean?
I was like, he's a star seed. And I saw like a reel recently where someone marked, they were like, their 2-year-old also does it. So it seems like it's a common
Yes.
trend amongst these youth. I mean, children are always the masters to lead the
Yeah.
way. So I'm very curious and excited to see what unfolds there.
It is exciting. There's this beautiful goddess up in Maine teaching spirit camp to children. And so she teaches them about everything, this chakra system, their connection to nature, their abilities that they may have the parents may not understand. So I think she starts at 4 years old. She is remarkable. She is a sister now, and she helped me start my career in teaching children mindfulness. So I owe her everything. But yeah, she's leading the space. She's been doing it for a long time as well, and so there is a lot of these beautiful teachers out there doing the work and helping the children really tune in, right? Fine tune it, I should say, fine tune their gifts because it's there already. So, and as a practitioner of the mind, it's just what happens is just by giving them the tools of understanding and the wording of what's happening, they're able to adjust and adapt so quickly. It's remarkable, and so I am just excited as you are to see what the next generation will bring. And I mean, that's why they're coming in now to do that. And I have a 1-year-old niece, and I already told my brother, I'm like, just every summer, just throw her over this way because she was born on a very special planetary astrology day. She was supposed to have been born days later, but she was like, no, today. And I was like, oh, you and I got you. I got you.
Amazing.
Yeah. So,
Amazing. And
right?
thank you for doing that work. I didn't know you were doing youth work. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's quite humbling and bring you to your knees kind of work. And you're just like, I feel like Wayne's World. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Just like, what? This is what I do now? Yeah. So definitely just they are everything. So I'm excited to hear more about as your nephew grows up and starts teach you, because that's what I feel like. There are our teachers, and they're coming in so pure, and it's magical. So yeah. And you coming in as yourself, you're one of them, coming in, talking to Jesus, meditating. Excuse me.
Hey, it's just the natural beingness, and I love that you're leading them in that way. Because just as as the children, the sweet spot is, we're all children in big bodies,
Right?
and we all have it as well. Where we
Yeah.
can get to the youth and just reaffirm to them your magic and what you're experiencing is truth. It's totally normal,
Yeah.
And the same for anyone who's listening, who maybe is curious or is going through something. Your magic is real.
Your magic is real.
It's we'll affirm it right now. Permission granted to be the magical version of yourselves. And if you're experiencing things or there's sensitivities, it's completely normal.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
supernatural is completely natural. I
It
love
is
Yogi
completely
Bhajan, Kundalini teacher. There's some triggers for people around him, but the work he did was immaculate, changing the collective consciousness forever. But Yogi Bhajan said, he's experiencing miracles and synchronicities is completely normal. It's when you're not experiencing miracles and synchronicities, that's when something's out of whack. The supernatural is something we should be experiencing on the normal. That is
Yes.
reality.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, that's beautifully said. That is exactly what I was describing to Kelly prior to us getting into this chat. I'm I feel a little disconnected, and that's exactly what it feels like. I'm there's no magic happening. What's going on? So, I appreciate that you coming through and sharing.
Con gusto.
Yeah. I know you said that you started, the modalities. What was the first modalities that kind of led you into the other amazing things that you offer?
Yeah. So yoga and meditation led me into learning Neville Goddard and manifestation, energy law of attraction in that way.
Beautiful.
And it was in Wayne Dyer. I was reading a lot of Wayne Dyer in that season. And during there, and when I'm looking off, I'm seeing myself there in case anyone's what's it? I'm very visual, and so when I recall things, I'm reliving experiences.
Yeah.
During that season, when I was going deep into the practices and being with that's when the message came through to look up healing modalities. And Reiki was the first modality that I delved into that was niched into the healing arts.
Wow. Wow. That is something, that Reiki was the first calling for you. Wow. That is something. And where did you figure out, obviously as you're getting older and you're starting Reiki, right? Where did you were able to look back and think, I was already kind of in this field. These things were just kind of bringing you right back into what was naturally for you. So yeah.
What a beautiful question. I resonated as I was creating more of the space for myself and being that doesn't feel, I was a rebel by nature. I was I'm not going to go into the 9 to 5. I'm going to figure out the entrepreneur thing and ride the roller coaster, which I perceive entrepreneurship as, it is the spiritual journey.
Yes.
You create something out of nothing. You hold a vision and you have faith in something that to be created, and you have to follow your intuition to do things, and you have, you come up against yourself and self-mastery. So I feel I was kind of in the gym for it. But as I started to deepen into meditation, I was reaching these places. I could feel the vast difference of alignment and not. I didn't have the words for it in that space, but I could feel it. Riding the highs of, just the flow and being high on love. But then not. And then when Seth came into my world, and that was just Seth was my first teacher. 2 days after receiving the message, I met him at a Barnes and Noble. Very synchronistic of just like, this is what you do now.
Right.
And he started doing sessions on me, and to just experience it, there was, again, just that knowingness of, this is what I'm here to do. Like, I'm all in.
Right.
There wasn't a questioning. There was just this is okay. This is what we do. And maybe that's just, I had built these pillars of faith and trust going into it. And again, during the season, I was still, I had a mentor I was doing side work, like doing solar sales. I was selling door to door, doing solar. And my mentor through there, he was deep on Jesus and the Bible. It was a Christian company. And so he was just teaching us amazing journaling practices. And his was reflecting on a verse a day. And he's like, you can choose just a motivational quote or something like personal development. But I was playing with verses and different quotes, and it's amazing setup that he had for us. And so I feel there was that, I was at the spiritual gym and having that faith muscle being interwoven, where it's just like, oh, let God's will and my will be one and the same. And if this is what's arriving while feeling, building this pillar of God, like, oh, this is God's will.
Yeah. Wow. That is something that how it just all intertwined. It's really amazing. And as you're going through along, becoming this amazing healer naturally for you, were there still a lot of shadow work that you had to process through?
Of course. I was having a conversation with a brother. He's in the south of France. And we were talking about how those of us, and we're all healers. A healer is simply someone who's learned how to heal themselves. Yes. And if we are in a human experience, we're all evolving and fumbling our way through life. Sometimes seasons are more flows and sometimes more ebbs. So we're all healers, But those of us who are either perceived in the world as a powerful healer or choose that identity for ourselves, choose your adventure, there tends to be a trend of having a lot of caca to have gone through in life, because our mess becomes our message, and we can't really support someone through something powerfully and like with integrity if we haven't been through it.
Yeah.
So I've been through a lot in my life, and that's not woe is me. Like, I'm grateful because now there's not too much that can come through my door that I feel I can't hold, that I don't have some sort of, deeper compassion for or understanding.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean that what I experience that's similar to that is theirs, and it's not for that. But I had to go through so much to get there. And the shadow work never ends. This winter, I went into hibernation because I was like, ooh, there's a season of shadow work that, I get to go in and really, clean house and do the thing. So there was shadow work. There's still shadow work. Because shadow work is just aspects of ourselves that hasn't seen the light yet or in a while.
Yes. Thank you for saying that for the listener. I appreciate that very much. Because that's what it is, right? Because I don't want it to sound scary, because the word like shadow self, the dark aspects of ourselves, it's just where it's kind of hiding. We put it in a closet and just said, not now, later, right? We're just like, I can't. Because, wherever we may be in our lives, we may not have the tools to process these things that may be coming up. And so whatever these survivor mechanisms that we've attained, whether it be caving, hermiting deeply, is just a process until you're able to come in and learn all these different aspects of yourself, and kind of you take the lead and open the closet, be like, okay, you first, right? And then we'll tackle you next. That's when you're doing intentful shadow work. Otherwise, when it just comes up because it comes up.
Something that I appreciate deeply when studying the subconscious mind, and I've gone through various certifications on the understanding of the subconscious mind and reprogramming it and all that fun stuff. our subconscious mind has this amazing mechanism where it will not allow you to access memories or experiences that you do not have the capacity to process at this time. That's why when we have repressed emotions and as we begin to do this work, you may clear some stuff and then more things you can begin to remember. That's essentially the way of your higher self and your subconscious mind saying, okay, you can now hold this. So a gentle reminder, if something's coming up in your space, you have the strength, the abilities, to work with it. If it's here, you can. Of course, I suggest, especially if the, much more challenging, heavier things, get someone who can help you and support you and do that. Yeah. But I just wanted to shine light on that because we're so powerful. Yes. And sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for how much we do hold on it daily and like what we are capable of. And one, I just think that's so fascinating to think of like how divinely we're created to have like this little lever in the back to be like, no, actually they're not able to hold that quite yet. Yeah. And like let you build up the stamina and the strength, I think is truly remarkable.
Absolutely. I didn't even know that there was like, it could do that, right? It was like kind of an inkling of it would allow certain things because even like you said, the repressed memories, and if you're not ready, I wonder how that works. So have you ever done ayahuasca?
I have.
How does that work? Because I have yet to do that. I've done DMT, but not ayahuasca, and it's a different experience because I've heard so many stories. I'm like, yeah, that's not what I had. How does that work with the subconscious? Because that's what's happening, right? It's kind of like allowing the unseen to come forward.
Yeah. So that's where there's a strong need for integrity of the facilitator and the screening process and the awareness, because when we sit with ayahuasca, that filter, that space, isn't fully engaged in the beingness.
Right.
And so when, sitting with grandmother, she's a master teacher, and my mama bear is going to come out for a moment. Please, if ayahuasca is not calling you, don't go sit with ayahuasca. And if you're like, how do I know if ayahuasca is calling me? She's not. You'll know. Yeah, she will call you. And that's where there's a space where it's like a teacher saying, hey, I have lessons for you, and I'm here to work with you now. And the teacher might be like, I'm not for you, but if you try to push at it, she's like, okay, you can come, but you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
When we sit with ayahuasca, we blast ourselves into, a sphere very similar to DMT, where that space of that protection mechanism, if you're sitting with those, a shaman and someone who has been doing this through lineages and lifetimes, they know how to hold that space and to bring that level of support and protection from outside things, but they can't necessarily guarantee that some of that darker space isn't going to come up and out. So it's a little bit less of it's like a little gatekeeper who's there, and then when I'm going to sit with ayahuasca, it's like, oh, I'm going to go take 15 and go take a break.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I love that you brought up that disclaimer because it's really important. Because in the age of natural drugs, I guess we could call them, right? Natural people would just want to use it as if they misuse marijuana, right? Because it's also a medicine, and we've all been there where we kind of use it as a thing to do versus an energy to work with and collaborate. So that's one, and then you have psilocybin, and then you have DMT and ayahuasca. I did the natural, I did the bufo, and I also had a facilitator there, and definitely you need that. And I love that you brought that up to when it does call you, to follow where that leads you into what space is that going to be. Is that going to be somewhere close to where you are? Maybe you may need to go to Peru or Costa Rica. So just allow for grandmother to lead you into that space. And I love how you said, you'll know, and you do, because that's the only reason I did it. It's the same. It was just calling. I was like, really? The top of the... I haven't even done ayahuasca. You want me to go straight to DMT? That's kind of crazy.
Amazing. How was your bufo experience?
remarkable. It was interesting because I didn't have memory of a lot that I brought back. But I knew this was 2 years ago. I knew that through time they will sprinkle the release, like the subconscious, right? Just here's this message and here's this, and it's been like that still since 2 years ago. And so now I can remember more of what I saw, and what the energy was there was Archangel Gabriel. And that was, I didn't know then until later on. I'm like, oh, that's who was there talking to me. I didn't know what light language was, but when I came back into my body, that's all I was speaking.
Nice.
Just right. And I didn't know then. And then months later, I heard this light language concept through Clubhouse, and there I heard people speak light language, and I'm like, oh my God, that's what I was sounding like. I didn't know. But truly beautiful journey. I would love to do it again. I will say that your meditation brought me back to that, because when I went to smoke it, the facilitator said to me, one more sip of the breath. So when you did the meditation, I was like, oh my God. That's what she said to me.
All natural bufo coming at you. The heart
All
space.
natural, all natural. Yeah, I know there's synthetic, and I'm like, I'm not about that life. So I'm like, no, I'll get the real deal. And there's this gentleman who facilitates. He's shaman. He works out of New Mexico, but he does touring around the country and comes to your city and rents, someone's house and does it. So I did it like very LA style. It was a house rented in Malibu with this beautiful view, and I thought to myself, I'm like, look at this, now I'm so LA.
Amazing.
But yeah, it was a great journey. And for those listening, only do if you're being called to it, because it is something that it's kind of like never knowing how to ride a motorcycle, and you're like, I can do it because I know how to ride a bicycle. Nope, don't even. Don't do that to yourself, because as anything else, if you misuse it, you can have a negative experience, and you don't want that to be your experience, I hope. Right?
I'd add to that, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that's one thing I'm so grateful for. I sit with various Indigenous elders, blessed to have them as teachers and mentors in my life. And one of the teachers really challenged me, Grandmother Moonwalker, she challenged me a lot of, like, we need to have you unlearn some things and, like, rebuild your foundation. And remember that we want to build a solid ground and make this sustainable. That we can reach all of these higher heights of these different spaces completely natural through meditation and through these different practices and tapping into our gifts and skills. She said it may take a bit longer, but it's sustainable, and then you can be living it and access it when you need to, as you need to. And for a full shift into a new understanding of life, it takes a series of different perspective shifts.
Yeah.
So we go through these different perspective shifts, and then in time there's a sustainable, complete shift of beingness.
Yeah.
And what can happen if we're not creating that strong foundation and we just blast ourselves into this, it can be hard to then integrate it into our day-to-day lives, where there's ways that we can build ourselves into these different frequencies. That we have a foundation of already an accelerated and elevated perspective and view of the world, that then it's like, oh, okay, then we can go for a little hike up the mountain. Like we're already, like, if we start to learn how to live halfway up the mountain,
Right.
then when we go to the peak of the mountain, it's not such a big drastic drop when we come down. Where that's been, there's a few people that I'm working with one-on-one right now where that's, they found their way to me after sitting with a few different medicines and having a hard time then integrating it, and then so what do I do now?
Yeah.
So my mama bear is extra sensitive around this right now, and it's their journey. It's exactly what needed to happen. It happened. So it's exactly what needed to happen. If something else was supposed to happen, then that would have happened.
Yeah.
It's, where it's there, where it's like, okay, let's build our building blocks here and create that strong foundation so that way we can slay the game of our game. Because we're all here to slay.
Yeah. I love that you offer that because I had a DMT hangover for a week and a half by myself. I had luckily had a friend who had already done DMT, but not synthetic. So kind of had someone help me understand what was going on. It was, at the time I didn't know what was happening. I'm like, yeah, I went to such a different high vibrational space, come back into the body, and then to integrate that, it takes time.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you brought that up, and with leading with that, besides the Reiki and this one-on-ones, what else do you offer the community in the healing process?
Yeah. So we work in different layers. We do have, Reiki trainings if someone's feeling called to learn it for themselves from level 1, level 2, and master. Then private healing sessions are available. And then we have the one-on-one coaching. I have an 8-week group program. We just closed out the last cohort. We had an amazing group of women. We closed out last Monday. The next one will be in September. So the wait list is open for that. And then we have our retreat that is a year-long program. So we'll be in Costa Rica for a full week, 6 nights, 7 days in December, which is a full immersion. And then we'll be together in that cohort for a year.
Amazing. Oh, so excited. I know Kelly was telling me about it beforehand. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I've been wanting to go to a retreat. So we shall see. And by saying it and her mentioning it was already like, this is where you're going. I'm like, okay. And now the sun's coming in. But before I let you go, Goddess, I wanted to see if there's anything that calls to you that you may want to share with the listener that you think it may be important for them to hear.
Thank you. So a reoccurring message that's been coming up in various conversations of reflection and just reminders for all of us, because we're all just in a dance of remembering. And none of us are ever really learning anything new. We're just remembering what's innate within our soul. And as we're in this world of AI advancements, maybe continue to remember our AI, our ancient intelligence that lies within ourselves, and be the bridges for this. And a key aspect that allows us to continue to keep deeply rooted in our ancient intelligence is the heart space that allows us to be our authentic selves. Permission to be who you are, your magical self, your messy self, your fully expressed, your loud laughter, your flashy dressing, whatever that is for you. We not only do we want it, we need authenticity at this time. It's one of the most powerful medicines for ourselves and for the collective. So just, permission to dive in and be your truest self.
And one last question with that. You said for the beginner, how would you tell them to distinct your ego self to your authentic self?
Great question. Well, one, I'm going to kind of break the internet on this. My first answer is your ego self is also you.
Right.
So an invitation of a reminder for all of us, all parts of ourselves are us. So, one, opening, especially if we're feeling we're just beginning to explore and step into our journey of authenticity, opening the space of compassion of all parts of ourselves are us, and we're learning how to deepen into love of all of it. And something a little bit more practical of tapping into that. But it feels important to say, because
Yeah.
we don't need to slay anything or get rid of anything. It's the opposite.
Yes.
Just like ascension isn't about going somewhere. It's actually the deeper we can come into our bodies and connect with Earth, the more we can rise. It's the world of oxymorons. But asking yourself, two powerful questions that can help to tap into that authentic truth. Question one, who am I? And not answering that question off of who you were a year ago, who you were a week ago, even, an hour ago.
Yeah.
Really sit with that question. Maybe place a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly and ask yourself, who am I in this exact moment? And not lying to yourself, not gaslighting yourself. Like, who are you in this moment? How do you feel? What are you up to? What are you curious about? And really allowing yourself to get, clear on this exact moment. Who are you? The second question is then asking, who am I becoming? And again, this isn't the space of who do you want to become, which is a fine line in that. If you reach out, if you're needing clarity of the space, but who am I becoming? And listening, asking that question and listening. Who am I becoming? What is that true north that I'm being called to?
Yeah.
And it's going to change because it's stepping blocks. Who I was becoming when at the start of this journey, has continued to change. I'm now becoming, different versions of myself. I'm becoming more of a show pony, like a talking head, and I'm becoming a global leader, and I'm becoming, there are different spaces where this wasn't what I was becoming before. I was becoming a healer.
Yes.
So those are two powerful questions to help us get really present and a little bit more clear of what we're swimming in and who we are now, and also support us in starting to head towards that true north.
That was beautifully said. Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you so much. I know that the listener will definitely appreciate that, because these are the questions I know that collective is asking themselves. So I appreciate you diving in and allowing for this information to come through and be heard. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your energy and your light with me and the listeners. It's been a gift meeting you.
Likewise, love. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you all to the listeners for tuning in and expanding with us in this beautiful space. And remember that the breath is the secret, and always lead with love. Until next time, thank you.